family secret. In the heart of Gorakhpur, Uttar Pradesh, lived a small, close-knit family. The matriarch, Savitri Devi, had one son, Arjun, who was the apple of her eye. When Arjun married a sweet and simple girl named Ananya, Savitri was initially pleased. Ananya was kind-hearted, respectful, and eager to care for her new family. But beneath the surface, something sinister lurked in the shadows of their home. The wedding was grand, and for the first few weeks, everything seemed perfect. The house was filled with laughter, relatives, and celebrations. But as time passed and the guests left, an eerie stillness settled over the household. One evening, as Arjun and Ananya were preparing to leave for their honeymoon, a neighbor, an old woman named Kamla, suddenly grabbed Ananya's hand. She squeezed it so tightly that the glass bangle on Ananya's wrist shattered. Gasps filled the air as tiny cuts appeared on her skin. Savitri frowned, displeased by the bad omen. "What nonsense is this?" she scolded the old woman. Kamla only smirked and whispered, "The bride has to pay for what she has taken." Before anyone could ask what she meant, she turned and disappeared into the crowd, brushing it off as the ramblings of an eccentric old woman. Arjun and Ananya left for their trip. However, something changed during their honeymoon. Only 4 days into their vacation, they cut their trip short and returned home. Arjun, usually cheerful and carefree, became quiet, and Ananya looked pale and weak. When Savitri questioned them, Arjun avoided eye contact and brushed it off. But she noticed Ananya's health deteriorating rapidly. She grew weak, lost weight, and had dark circles under her eyes. At night, Savitri heard her murmuring in her sleep, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing softly in the darkness. Then came the screams. One night, just after midnight, blood-curdling screams echoed through the house. Savitri and her husband rushed to their son's room, only to find the door locked from the inside. Ananya was shrieking in terror, her voice filled with agony. "Arjun, open the door." Savitri pounded on the wood. Moments later, the door creaked open, revealing Ananya sitting in the center of the room, her hair disheveled, her nails digging into her own skin. She was rocking back and forth, whispering in a voice that wasn't hers. When asked what had happened, Arjun hesitated, but finally admitted that Ananya had been behaving strangely since their honeymoon. At night, she would wake up and start speaking in an unfamiliar language. Sometimes, she wouldn't remember her own name. Savitri, now terrified, sought help from a local priest. When the priest entered the house, he immediately sensed something unnatural. "There is dark magic at play," he said. "Something was done to her before she left for the trip." Then, Savitri remembered the shattered bangles, the old woman's cryptic words. Had she cursed her daughter-in-law? The priest suggested a purification ritual, but before it could be performed, things took a horrifying turn. One night, Savitri woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. When she stepped outside her room, she saw Ananya standing in the darkness, staring at her with hollow eyes. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, in a single motion, she lifted her hand and pointed toward the main entrance. The door creaked open on its own. A gust of cold air filled the house, and the lights flickered. The priest, who had been staying overnight, rushed forward and began chanting holy verses. Ananya let out a guttural scream, her body contorting in unnatural ways before she collapsed. The priest turned to the family. "She is under the influence of something malevolent, and it was someone close first time in weeks, the house was silent. The next morning, Ananya woke up, weak but seemingly back to normal. She had no memory of what had happened. The family breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was over, but it wasn't. 2 days later, the neighbor Kamla was found dead in her house. The cause? Unexplained internal injuries, as if something had crushed her from the inside. And on Ananya's wrist, where the bangle had shattered,